This video will look at your options where the local authority have refused to issue an education, health and care plan following a needs assessment. If the local authority has undertaken a needs assessment, by week 14 they will make a decision on whether or not to issue an EHCP. The decision will be based on the reports and evidence that they've gathered in the needs assessment. They will send you a letter confirming their decision, and it will include information on your right to appeal. You also have several other options. One option is to look at the recommendations that the local authority have put in their letter and think about whether these recommendations would help your child or young person to progress. In some cases, once these recommendations have been tried, the child or young person is able to make progress. If the recommendations are tried but there's no progress, or your child or young person requires more support than the setting can provide, you will have new evidence to make a new request for assessment at a later date. In other cases, these recommendations are already in place, or you may feel that they are not appropriate. If you think the decision was made without seeing all of the evidence, you can discuss this with the local authority, but you will need to know what you believe is missing. It may be that you're waiting for a report to come back from an occupational therapist or a speech and language therapist that could have impacted the local authority's final decision. If you speak to the local authority and they say that they will look at the late information when it comes in, remember that the decision has already been made not to issue a plan, and there is no statutory process for the local authority to change that decision other than through mediation or an appeal. You can request a new assessment after 6 months, but you will need new evidence. Without this, the local authority will not agree to undertake a new needs assessment because based on the original evidence, they can only make the same decision. You also have the option to attend mediation or lodge an appeal with the SEND tribunal. Let's look at these options in more detail. Mediation is a less formal way of resolving the dispute between yourself and the local authority. It involves an online meeting between yourselves as parents, a representative from the local authority, and a trained mediator. The mediator is impartial and is there to facilitate discussions to make sure everyone is treated fairly and that the statutory guidelines are being followed. Mediation meetings don't always lead to the issue being resolved, but sometimes they do. If an agreement is reached, this will be written down in what's called a mediation agreement. This is a contract between you and the local authority, and it's binding. If an agreement is not reached, you will be issued with a mediation certificate, and you will be able to lodge an appeal with the SEND tribunal if you want to. You can also obtain a mediation certificate without attending a mediation appointment if you prefer. If you want to lodge an appeal against a refusal to issue decision, you will need a mediation certificate. You will need the local authority decision letter to arrange a mediation appointment or to request a mediation certificate, so it's important to keep it somewhere safe. We have another video about mediation on our YouTube channel which goes into more detail about how to prepare for the meeting and what to expect. Your deadline to lodge an appeal is 2 months after the date on the local authority decision letter, or 1 month after the date on the mediation certificate, whichever is later. You can lodge a late appeal, but a judge has to consider if your appeal should be registered, which can add further delays. If you want to lodge an appeal against a refusal to issue decision, you will need a mediation certificate. This states that you have either been through the mediation process and it's not resolved the dispute, or that you have received information about mediation and decided you don't want to try it. You need to have at least considered mediation as an option before lodging an appeal, and you will need to use the SEND 35 form to lodge an appeal against a refusal to issue decision. We have a video on our YouTube channel which explains how to complete the SEND 35 form, and you can find the link to this in the video description.